also to explain you a little bit more what we want to achieve today. So as Yannick said, we want to have a conversation. So we don't want this to be a monologue or a stand-up comedy. We just want to be like a open conversation with friends, sharing some coffee or beer or whatever you have in hand. And also, we're going to make some questions to know like how things are going, how you perceive things. We would love to know to hear your beautiful voices from all over the world. In case you are too shy or your mic doesn't work well, there is a very cool feature in Zoom where you can raise your hand. So you can actually raise your hand and we can see like it's kind of the interactive way we can do in this online world. So, or you can also write us in the chat. There's a chat added to this Zoom interface. So in case you are too shy to make a question, feel free to do it also in chat, or if you don't want to interrupt, feel free to interrupt. It's part of the dynamic of the webinar. Are you ready, Yannick?
Sorry, Simon wrote in the chat if this is going to be recorded.
Yes, it is.
Hi, Simon. I just answered you in the chat. It will be recorded. Not always we share the recordings, but sometimes we do a little, we record it so we can gather the insights and then write a little debrief to share with you guys in case you want to share with your teams. But the idea is not to publicly share the recording, just in case that's one of the problems. We won't be publicly sharing a video of what's being recorded, but yes, it's being recorded, but mostly for our purposes, so we can make a little brief of all the topics discussed and share it with you guys.
And thanks, Hannah, for putting the example. That's the interruptions we want. So
beautiful. So I think we can start. Thank you so much to the 29 participants we have here. As we said before, the idea is to have a conversation. We don't want just to speak and spit stuff your way. We want to have feedback and some kind of interaction. So if you want to post something in the chat or mute your microphone at any time, that's more than welcome. Also, we are planning to open some time for open discussion at the end. So we will have the chance to share some ideas. So first of all, what is Fuck Up Nights? Do you guys know what Fuck Up Nights is? I know some people we've worked with already. I can see some familiar faces, so definitely do know. And if not, I'll share very briefly what it is. Fuck Up Nights is a global movement dedicated to share stories of business and professional failure. And it started in Mexico City in 2012. And each event, we have 3 or 4 speakers sharing the stories that are a bit less glamorous, the stories we normally don't share. And it has expanded since its inception to 300 cities in 90 countries around the world. Those are open to public events on those chapters with our amazing team members all around the globe. But also we have done hundreds of events for organizations, corporations, development banks, academic institutions, and really organizations of all kinds. And today, I want to use a little image or personal story to explain what Fuck Up Nights is. Me, as a kid, I was a very focused football player. I really liked Ronaldo, and I really wanted to be a star like him. I actually trained quite hard, and I soon realized that my skills were a bit more like the same, this image here. So at the age of 12, I quit my professional career of a professional football player. And actually I had in my perspective, I was really on the right direction to be like Ronaldo. It costed me a few failure and attempts and a few people to tell me that I wasn't that good at it. However, I didn't want to share this. It's not my largest failure story. It's just one of them. I didn't want to share this to talk about me, sorry. I wanted to share it because I think something very similar happens in organizations around the world when it comes to perception. And we see all of the companies we interact with like the first image. Even us working for these companies, we like to see ourselves as Ronaldo. And in reality, it doesn't always work like this. And we have many situations that we look more like me at the age of 12, kicking a football into my nose. And we are a bit scared of sharing these stories. We don't want to admit them. We don't want to show the world that we actually do things wrong. And we try to put some makeup on them. So I really like showing this image because I've lived it firsthand, not only with this experience, but with many others. And because it's something that we live in our working environment every single day. And if you can move to the next image, please. So as I said, we tend to put our mistakes in the drawer. We tend to put a little bit of makeup on them and try to show how we're actually reaching our KPIs. And whenever we have our performer reviews, everything's fantastic. There's no problems when we're in public, but then we stress out and we pull our hairs where things are actually going upside down sometimes. So have any of you ever had the feeling of being scared about sharing a mistake you had at a project, or have you always been super open about it? I see Hannah. I see
I think
Ricardo.
I think it depends on the culture of the company. So with the company that I'm here now, I'm not afraid because we are like used to accepting the failures, and failures are encouraged and shared with others. Whereas at the former corporates I was working, it was like, oh, you have to be really good, and if you are not good, you're not one of us, and you have to go. So yeah, it depends pretty much on the culture and the values the company stands for.
Thank you so much for sharing, Hannah. It is completely related. Yeah.
Because I agree, but I also think it depends on the level of expertise. Because for me personally, if I'm really good at something, then I don't mind screwing up or admitting to mistakes. But once or when I start something new, I really want to ace it and really want to be good at it and prove that I'm also good at that. And for me, I think that's also a factor. The more senior I am, the more open I am to admitting to mistakes.
Thank you so much. That's actually something very, very similar to what Ashley posted in the chat. That she is, and it took her a few years to understand the outcome is much easier to handle. When we're able to own our mistakes and to take accountability to our own actions. So it's interesting that we agree there's a learning curve professionally, but at the same time also culturally in the organizations we work with. And in talking about culture and organizations, sometimes we tend to blame others, and blaming is a very strong word, and others is other strong word. When it comes to not taking accountability for our own actions when things go sour, we do when things go great and we want to have our medals on. But when they don't, we tend to not fully admit that we screwed up. Sometimes it's easier, or it makes more sense, or we actually want to believe, make us ourselves believe that things didn't go right because of the actual context. Maybe the social economic context wasn't right. Maybe you had a recession, the crisis we had a few years back. Maybe political changes affected, etc., etc. So it's easier to kind of, there's a lot of variables that play in the equation of something that goes wrong. Why not taking one of the variables that is not ours and that we cannot control, when actually taking control of these variables is something important and it's something we should do at our job. Not everything is going to go smooth. And creating a culture of blaming, in our opinion, is not the best for creating an open culture and admitting mistakes. What happens here is that sometimes you become less likely to share different points of view. And there are some organizations that are very open to do things differently. Some organizations that are a bit more conventional, and if this has worked for 150 years, why should we do something different right now? From the work we do in Fuck Up Nights, because we've worked, as I said before, with hundreds of organizations from all kinds and all industries, we've seen a trend when it comes to start doing things differently, very related to digital transformation and to adopting agile methodologies. And I am sure you guys have heard of these topics in several internal meetings. And it's very interesting how we've seen the clash of we should do things as usually and follow the process, but at the same time, we should do things differently because we need to adapt to changing environments and changing ways of work and different habits, and how these two visions and ideas, which are probably even shared, both of them by the same person, clash and how we make the most of it. So I don't know, how do you believe in your organizations there's a safe space to share different points of view about solutions, or how strict they are? Well,
I think I can share one in
yep.
yes, in a previous job, as Hannah and Monica were also like sharing. We have a lot of experiences from our previous job, and I remember there was this meeting that we all needed to have like these new ideas, and the management, the top management was pushing really hard because we needed to be innovative and have like great ideas and all of that. And it was like a lot of pressure that even when you share like a crazy idea, people will say like, that's very stupid. And then you will not be like confident enough to share another idea, right? Because it was just like a baseball game. They were just boom, hitting all the ideas, and all our self-esteem was on the floor. So yes, I was in an environment where it was like very complicated, and now nobody was able to share ideas. And when somebody shared like a new ideas, we were always blaming on them, like, oh, that's why your team is very bad at stuff, you know? So like, I can see like all these things very related to each other.
Thank you, Ricardo. And again, this is all these things we have here on the screen affect somehow to making individuals understand that if they work for such a company, they need to behave like workers for such a company. And that means acting, thinking, and doing as we are expected to. And sometimes this is great. Sometimes it can create something called the common knowledge effect, which means everybody's supposed to think the same way. And this is limiting individuals to make the most of their potential and their skills. It makes companies move a bit slower, and it's actually putting the handbrake to innovation, creativity, and sometimes even better decision taking. And all this are things that we've seen in all the companies we've worked with. We even have seen these at Fuck Up Nights. Not a single company is perfect. There's a lot of things that play into account of creating scenarios like this, and it's what a lot of experts call spaces of psychological danger. Sounds very dramatic, but it's actually quite easy to get into that loophole. And probably you get into that loophole just in a meeting, probably just in a project, or from 9 to 5 when you're working for a certain company. And it's not only about the culture, it's also about ourselves. So a little bit, we wanted to talk about this to show what things may cause these spaces of psychological danger and which habits can we reinforce to kind of escape from them. And 3 things we've seen that are very related to those spaces, and not cause and consequence, but related, are the fact that we take defensive decisions. Another one that we'll see later is imposter syndrome. We talked about it on our past webinar, and another one is covering, and how can we are limited to be ourselves at work. The first one is CYA. Have you guys heard about this term? So the image is quite explanatory, and it means cover your ass. And that's not something we made up. That's actually something that it's even included in the Oxford Dictionary. And we like that term, CYA, because it's quite fuck up night. Thank you, Daniel. Exactly. And there's another way of taking this concept, and we use also the term of defensive decision taking. Sounds a little bit more suitable for work. So what is defensive decision taking? Defensive decision taking is whenever you have a really good option that you think it's the best option, the most beneficial for the company when it comes to taking a decision, but you take the second best option that will leave you in a safe space if things go wrong. What's that? You believe that something could be extremely good, but if you take the risk and try and it doesn't work out, people are going to look at you. If you take the second option, it's probably still really good for the company, but it's understood that someone in your role in this company would take such a decision. So no one's going to actually criticize or blame you if you act this way. So an average manager takes between 2.5 and 5 defensive decisions for the 10 most important decisions they took in a year, which is quite a lot. 25 or 50% of the decisions they take are defensive, and the costs of opportunity are severe. Yeah, Hannah?
I have a question. Where did you get the numbers? How did you find out?
There's a study, and I can share that study with you afterwards if you want. And there's actually quite some surveys that talk about defensive decision making. And also, we won't go too deep into what causes that, but those research reports also show if it's because of the culture, because of the level of seniority, because of the legal and financial issues the company has, etc., etc., etc. So there's a very nice breakdown. We'll be happy to share this with you. I thought you were going to say, where did I get the image? Took just a photo of my donkey before coming to the webinar. So cover your, record all your meetings. Daniel says, record all your meetings, CC, BCC all your emails, and track record of all your accomplishments, just in case you need to cover your ass. Exactly. That's another thing that happens when people are covering their ass, is that you become less productive by investing more time covering and making sure people know you did something. Making sure you put more people in meetings that you should, that you put more people on CC, just so everyone knows that you're actually doing the right steps to get there. And that is a result of working in spaces that are not very comfortable to openly talk about failure. When the failure culture is not open to share learnings and admit that sometimes we do things right, sometimes we do things wrong, and that we should all be in a place where it's okay to take risks. And I'm not saying it's okay to fail, because not always. We shouldn't be celebrating failures if someone decides just to disappear for 2 weeks when they have a deadline. But there are some cases where we actually should reinforce taking certain risks if we're trying to bring the best for the company. And then, as said, we will also talk about imposter syndrome, and we again touched this in our previous webinar, but I'd like to, we'll touch it on a different direction. And it's interesting to see how failure actually distorts our perceptions. And it's also interesting how many different business approaches are on setting up our quarterly goals or sales targets, etc. Should we go super ambitious so we think out of the box, or should we actually be realistic? That's not something we're going to answer. There's different ways of doing it, and both are correct. But one thing that is a fact is that actually failing at something distorts our perception. And there was a study that they made people kick a football on an unmarked field. And they had to kick it and score it. Obviously, not everyone scored. After kicking, they asked these participants of the study how far this goal was and how high was it. And what tended to happen when they analyzed the results was that people failing at scoring the goal said that they thought the goal was actually higher and further away than it was. So this means that failure makes our objectives feel more unattainable, make them further away and harder to accomplish. And it's important to know that, because the same way it can make our objectives have a distortion of the reality of our objectives and targets and goals, it can distort the way we see our own skills and how we perceive ourselves as professional. So it's a bit dangerous when we start seeing failure as something that's a limit of our abilities. And this sometimes causes the so-called imposter syndrome, which is making someone feel that they don't deserve the recognition they actually have. And I'm gonna pass the microphone to Ricardo, who will tell us a little bit about imposter syndrome. By the way, I just realized we didn't introduce ourselves. So I'm Yannick, Business Development Leader at Fuck Up Nights, and Ricardo is the global coordinator and manager for the movement of Fuck Up Nights. And we also have Eric, who's also working together with me with business development.
Cool. Thank you, Yannick, for the introduction. And now Yannick has been talking a lot of time about imposter syndrome. I know he was anxious about getting to this topic, and I really am. So I am also very excited. So of course, all of these things about failure affecting and distorting our perception leads us to this imposter syndrome. So here, I always like to make this exercise. You can raise your hand if you know or if you have experience what's an imposter syndrome. Raise your hand. Even if you have your camera turned off, raise your hand. And your coworkers might ask you, what are you doing? Awesome. Awesome. Daniel raised a hand. Perfect. Super. Monica raised a hand as well. Awesome. So many participants raised a hand. Good. So for all the people that didn't know if they needed to raise a hand here or not, I'm going to explain you really quick what's imposter syndrome, or as Yannick already explained, is this feeling that what you have achieved so far or all the things that you have accomplished were by luck or by chance, or you actually didn't deserve them. So, okay, now everybody's like, yeah, all the stadium is raising their hands, right? So it started with research on why women had like a lot of challenges on the workspace, right? And they realized that 70% of the women actually didn't apply for a job until they had 100% of the requirements, right? While maybe men didn't care about like complying with all the things, they just apply for things, right? Later on, wait for it, they realized that actually it was not just a woman thing, actually it's for all the people in the world. So 70% of the world experiences imposter syndrome. And maybe imposter syndrome sounds like a very tragic word as well as a psychological danger, but it's just another way of describing these thoughts and this way of us not really believing on the accomplishments and the goals that we have done through our life, right? To give this, maybe some of you realize like, yes, I have the imposter syndrome. Some of you might not have realized that you have experienced some type of imposter syndrome. So what I'm going to share with you right now is that later research showed that there are 5 types of imposter syndrome. And I want to make an exercise with you so you also be self-aware of what type of imposter syndrome you have. So I don't know, guys, you're raising the hand because you have the imposter syndrome or if you want to share something, but feel free to interrupt me anytime. So also a little bit of more context is that we tend to do imposter syndrome because we want to mask all our mistakes, or we want to mask like our under accomplishments because we are distorted by our failures. So our perception is distorted. And also we live in a space of psychological danger where we're not very safe to take off our masks, right? As this beautiful little dog. So the first type of imposter syndrome is called the perfectionist. This type of imposter syndrome is for people that believe that everything they must do should be perfect. And even though they accomplish 99% of their things, if 1% of one little detail is not perfect, then they believe that the whole project or the whole goal is fucked up, right? And then you are an imposter and people will see that you are not good enough to accomplish projects or to do things, right? That's a perfectionist. The second one, and I don't know if you guys feel related to the perfectionist. Maybe I can explain the 5 of them, and then later you will tell me which one do you relate to, okay? You can relate to one or more. The second one is the expert. So the expert is the people that they believe they need to know everything. And besides that, they need to have certificates or validations that they know it. So this is the people that when they apply to a new job or they apply to a new position or a new role, they believe that they must have their certificate posted on LinkedIn saying that they took a Google Ads webinar and they took a Fuck Up Nights webinar and now they can talk about failure, right? So it's the people that are looking always for external validation to feel that they really know what they're saying or what they are doing. The third one is the soloist. So these are the people that they believe they should do things only on their own. And if it happens that they need to do things on a team, that means that they were not good enough to achieve the goals on their own. So of course, these are the people that tend to do things separately because they tend to have an imposter syndrome in group decisions or in group work. Maybe you can start detecting which people are having this type of conflict, and maybe it's not the problem, it's part of the imposter syndrome, it's part of the psychological danger that they are living also. The fourth one is the superhuman. The superhuman is these people that believe they must be good at everything. It's not like the expert that they have to have the validations. It's the people that think that they have to be a very good employee, a very good boss, a very good brother, a very good sister, a very good son, a very good father, a very good parent, a very good uncle. They have to be good at everything. And maybe your son asks you for some money and you don't have money because you lend that money to your boss. So then you feel like an imposter syndrome because you failed at life, right? I mean, if it was your son didn't even need that money. So that's the superhuman, people that need to have like everything pleasing everybody on their surroundings. And the fifth one is the natural genius. We talked a little bit about this on our previous webinar, which was from the Growth and Fixed Mindset Theory from Carol Dweck. Natural genius is the people that they believe that they have talents and they have skills because they were born with them, right? And is these people that they believe they should achieve things right at the first time. So it's like when you were a kid and they told you, oh, Yannick, you were very good at football. You will be a professional football player, right? They don't even take into account that you need to practice and you need to go to lessons and you need to fail. And then maybe somehow by whatever, you will be a professional player. But natural genius is when people face a challenge, they believe they cannot overcome that challenge because they were not gifted by the abilities or the skills needed to accomplish those things, right? So these are the 5 types. To open the conversation, I'm going to share with you which type of imposter syndrome I really have. And I realized that on a previous event we had with a partner in Colombia, and I am the perfectionist. But a lot, I didn't even realize that until I took like this webinar, not this webinar, like this, I started to realize more and study more about the imposter syndrome. And I'm the perfectionist because we're having this event and there was a background noise. So there were some people chatting on the background and I believe nobody heard of them. But I was all the time getting anxious because I was like, oh man, like the event is going really good, but this noise here is making people confusing, is making people not being really like putting attention on the topics, not being really vulnerable. And in the end, nobody realized there was like this noise. Nobody even said anything about the noise. But in my mind, I was suffering all the event because I felt that the event was not perfect and that it was also my fault by not saying something to these guys that they should shut up. But then I just kind of released all the tension and realized that it's normal. 70% of the people have this imposter syndrome. And there are some ways to embrace imposter syndrome. We're going to let you know a little bit more about that. Of course, there's no magic recipe, but there are some tips and tricks that we can share. You people, what type of imposter syndrome have you acknowledged you have?
Well, I think I used to have the number 2, the expert syndrome. And it was with my languages, and it was like it's like 15 years ago, and I used to speak German and English, but I was really afraid to go to the countries and speak the language because I was not perfect in that, and I didn't have any diploma, and I was an expert, and I didn't have the C2 level of that, so I didn't speak. I understood everything, but I didn't speak. And then one of my colleagues came to me and he said, you know what's just imagine what's the best and what's the worst that can happen. Like the best is, oh, you will be so awesome and everyone will understand you. And what's the worst? They just turn around and walk away if they don't understand.
Exactly.
So usually it's somewhere in the middle. So don't be afraid. So every time I'm afraid to speak to someone, I usually recall this sentence and I'm okay. But expert number 2, that was my type.
Really cool example, Hannah. Thank you very much for sharing. We see here on the chat 4, 2. Okay, perfectionist. Okay, I'm with you, bro. Sorry, it's Irina. I'm with you. So perfectionism as well. All of them. It's normal. Yes, there's people that I have even 6 and 7. They haven't discovered them, but I have them. So who else wants to share what an experience where you realized that you had the imposter syndrome? Superhuman for Sarah. Jody has 1 and 4. Who else wants to share an example? Don't be shy, guys, or do it really quiet so nobody else on the company.
I can share one if no one jumps in. Or
Monica was going to share, Yannick. Maybe we can give some time. Yes, Monica, you were brave enough. It's your time.
No, I don't want to share. I have a question. So maybe share your stories, and then I still have a question because something is not really clear to me yet.
Good, super.
Okay.
Super. So if I can share mine. I think I had lots of them, but very recently I had the superhuman one. I was very busy with the work I was doing at Fuck Up Nights. At the same time, I started a business for luxury travel in the Mediterranean and basically renting boat charters, an online platform for it. And at the same time, I became a dad, and at the same time, I was getting divorced. So I had to try to be so good at so many different fronts, and it took me ages to realize that it wasn't the right time for all of this together, and I had to make a selection and focus on the important things and take some time for myself as well. But I was trying to succeed in absolutely everything, and I couldn't accept that I was actually failing at a little thing, probably at work or probably at not spending enough time with my daughter at that time. And yes, it made me feel like a scam to myself. So yeah, I can sympathize with that one, and with all the others as well, to be honest.
Thanks, Yannick. Monica, you want to make your question?
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. Because I'm still not sure when am I being humble and when does the imposter syndrome start? For me, this is a very fine line.
That's an amazing question. I also have the same question. I don't have the answers. We can still continue this journey of life. So yes, I'm going to give you my opinion, because I believe this is really related to also self-esteem, because people might tend to think that the high esteem will reduce the imposter syndrome. I once read, I know Hannah is going to ask for the stars. I don't have it, but I once read that there is no direct relationship between self-esteem and imposter syndrome. So one thing is you can be humble, and you can see, like, one thing that we say a lot in Fuck Up Nights is to defeat your ego, right? And being humble is against is with defeating your ego, right? So it's against having a high ego. And it's very different to say that, hey, I can speak to 4 languages and I can speak better than you, than saying I can speak 4 languages, you know? So one, or the other one is that, oof, I don't know if I'm good enough in these 4 languages. There's come the imposter syndrome, you know, like I will not speak German because somebody here will speak German and will realize that I have an accent. all of that. But that's a really interesting story, Monica, really interesting question, Monica. And that actually leads us to the next topic, which is what happens when we have all this imposter syndrome, where we're having like all these masks that we're putting on ourselves, and we're not able to be our true self, right? So there's one concept that was, first it was discovered by a psychologist called Erving Goffman in the 1950s, and then it was later researched and developed by Kenji Yoshino, and later there was a study by Deloitte and Harvard, which is the term called covering. Covering is what we do, and it's actually very like self-explanatory, is what we do to cover ourselves and to not show our true self. And on this research that Deloitte did, we realized that 61% accepted covering at their work. As you can see, this very famous meme, he's covering his pain. Actually 61% accepted to make some kind of covering. There can be covering from appearance. So maybe I don't want people to acknowledge that I'm Mexican, and maybe I'm going to cover my accent, or I'm going to wear some makeup as Michael Jackson did, so they cannot know that's what's my color. Or even it's covering from, there's this study said that many women covered not saying that they were mothers and they had sons, because that will show kind of less commitment on the work. Or there's another one where people don't bring their gay couple to the business dinner because that might affect their performance. Or there's another covering where people tend to imitate the top management team because that's the way you get the next position. So there's like a lot of covering. And the main problem with covering is that it actually makes you have a lack of energy. Like all your energy is focused on covering yourself. It's focused on not showing your true self, not being authentic. And this is horrible for productivity, and it's horrible for creativity, because all that energy that can be spent on those two things that are really valuable for an organization are spent on hiding my true self. So this is something that is another symptom on how psychological danger spaces affect the productivity and the like safe space we live as a whole in environments. And I'm going to give the mic to Eric, who is next to me and who's really anxious to share his what he needs to show. So now we covered right now what's like kind of the symptoms of psychological danger spaces. And now Eric is going to show us a little bit more how to make a transition to a beautiful world.
Hope. Thank you, Ricardo and Yannick.
So
That's
yes,
the last one.
that's how you can take off your covering
You can
and show your
uncover.
true self to the world. Good, thank you.
So Ricardo was saying these are some symptoms about how does it feels to live in a toxic or dangerous work atmosphere. But we also want to say or show you a little bit how you can convert this thing with a Google research that made a couple years ago. You know, Google is rockstar, like finding ways and work structures to show productivity and boost productivity in their employees. They literally have research how affects like having lunch with your workmates, or more interesting stuff like how micromanagement impacts your professional path. But until that research, Google thought that the best themes are like finding the best people, joining together and start working. But in 2012, they found out something that is called psychological safety. And they have crunched like a bunch of data. The objective was simple, like finding the best team and the high performance teams, right? So they crunch hundreds of data, like, for example, you have a team where everybody is like intelligent people and everyone gets to the point and nobody drifts apart. And if someone are drifting from the meeting, he or her back to the point, and the meeting finishes and everyone gets to their jobs. And in other teams, they were like having fun. Everybody could like interrupt someone and start talking about their lives and drift about the objective of the meeting, but then come back and the meeting takes longer. And Google find out that when they select the chosen ones of the high performance teams, both teams are in the variables. So for a company that search information, the words you can get is like patterns and in different directions, right? So what they discover, Julia Rosowski started focusing on the unwritten rules of these chosen one high performance teams that has different variables, different patterns. Someone wants their boss to be straightforward, someone wants more flexibility. So they discover two main unwritten rules and behaviors that all these teams have. One was equality in conversational distribution. That's pretty logical, that everyone should participate equally time. This relates a little bit on the past themes. You will see why. And the other important topic was social sensitivity. So when you combine those, you get collective intelligence, but you will not have like collective intelligence if you don't have social sensitivity. This is pretty simple. Equality on conversational distribution is pretty much respect, that everybody is participating and everyone respects their opinions. But in the first team, you will have like some bunch of serious guys, like not interacting with their lives. They won't have empathy. They wouldn't notice if Ricardo is sad or tired or Janik is like having some issues. So they will not have trust. Empathy builds trust, right? And the collective intelligence is no more than authenticity and people taking risks. So what psychological safety is a team status where interpersonal trust and respect allow people to take risk and be themselves. And this creates a empathy and loop when you are comfortable admitting mistakes, when you can actually learn from failure, everyone openly shares idea, and there is better decision-making and innovation process. So the question is how to build psychological safety. And there is some like patterns you can do, some actions, like identify your ingredient rules in your teams. Like what are those behaviors that everyone respects? If someone is impunctual and they laugh at it or they don't, if you can share about your personal life when enter to a meeting or not. The other one is protect collective intelligence from individual brainers or jerks, right? That jerk that is like super clever but doesn't add up to the team. Protect the team in the whole, right? And in equality and participation and distribution, you can actually lead by example with active listening, where everybody shares their ideas, because if someone is not sharing that crazy idea that Ricardo said, you cannot have this collective intelligence where the group is better than someone. And social sensitivity is pretty easy. You can start humanizing meetings, because the most important when you are discussing is like knowing to know each other. So this is a few tips. I don't know if Ricardo.
Yes, and as you can see, like everything is related with the symptoms that we discussed previously, right? So there is like this imposter syndrome where people don't actually participate because they believe maybe they might think that their idea is not good enough, right? So they will not talk about it. Or maybe like there was like this conversation we had also with like Netflix and the production, where they say like, we don't accept intelligent jerks. And there's always like this person that maybe is bright and has amazing ideas, but having this person that is not allowing people to collaborate together, and is having like the 100% of the conversation that will not build trust, that will not build respect, and in the end people will not be authentic, right? So one very interesting exercise is writing and identifying these unwritten rules. And it's an exercise we want everybody to do maybe after this meeting, if you have some 5 minutes. Write those rules that it's not in your manifesto, it's not in the values of the company, it's not in the mission of your organization, but it's like every time somebody is unpunctual to a meeting, we make faces. Or like the first person to bring coffee, we are going to love them, right? It can be as silly as them, or if somebody delivers late, then they have like less possibilities to get their next job, you know, like try to identify those unwritten rules and then put a mark on them if they are safety, psychological safety or psychological danger. Not all unwritten rules are dangerous, right? Or not all of them are safe, but identifying which one of them, how they affect, and then doing some actions to change them, right? It really depends on unwritten rules that we all live, right? I cannot give you like, these are the top 10 unwritten rules that gives you success, because we don't talk about success, but we can tell you the top 10 that bring you to failure. And it's like all the things that we have talked before. So then you want to
and these two rules are important that bring up together, that are together, because you could have like equality on distribution conversation, but that doesn't mean that people is going to share and admit their failures, because you are not in a bunch of group where is trust. So social sensitivity, that where is important, because you will have, for example, in the team A, you have all the people participating equal time, but they will not take that risk to admit when they fail, or they will not take that risk to empathize with other people. And in, for example, in social sensitivity, you are detecting get along with all your team, but if you are not taking equally time conversational turn taking, they will not participate equal, and innovation and the collective intelligence will not appear, right? So that's where two factors combining search with magic, and with one another doesn't so much.
in the end, what we want to achieve is to like.
Thank you, guys. I would like to ask you, in general, what tricks, tips, or habits do you think that would be valuable for us and for the rest of the audience on how to build psychological safety? Which little things you think that help? Like, for instance, we started in some meetings asking about our personal life and talk about our personal life for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. How are you with your girlfriend? How's the situation about your dad that was sick, etc.? How are you doing? How are you feeling today? And this actually helped a lot with focusing more and being more relaxed and more open in the rest of the meeting, and actually pretty much throughout the day. But there must be millions of little tricks that you guys probably are doing that we could share. Does anyone have something that they think is very beneficial for building this safe space, or this space of psychological safety?
I don't want to steal all the time for myself. Yeah, we had some meetings back in the Czech Republic when usually we opened up by all the team members standing up, and everyone had to say how they are feeling today and why. So if somebody was feeling sad or angry about anything back in home, for example, then the other team members knew, okay, so today maybe the productivity will not be that good, but that's okay, maybe tomorrow it will be better. And that actually helped a lot with opening up and gaining the trust among the team members. And what I am playing now in my mind for like when I come back to Czech Republic to my company is that I actually read some, I think it was from Elon Musk, that we have a lot of meetings in our company, a lot. And some of the meetings are for some people very not productive, and usually what I hear when they come back from the meeting is like, I didn't even know why I was there. So, and Elon Musk said, okay, so if in the first 5 minutes you find out that the meeting is not productive and it's not for you and you have nothing to contribute with, just go away. So it would be interesting to see how the people would cooperate with that, you know. So because, you know, it will spare a lot of time, even for them and even for the team. But I'm not sure about the trust then, you know, and all the gossip. Oh, you know, he didn't want to attend the meeting, etc. So
That's
Very
very interesting,
interesting.
Hannah. There is actually a concept we really like as well, which is called radical candor. And we actually recommend to read that book and to read like this topic as well. And it says that radical candor is saying like with care and challenging directly, we'll say like this meeting for me is not productive. I will leave so you can have like this productivity without me, right? So it's like saying things directly, caring because you care that that meeting is better. Is really different. I say like, oh, you are very bad at creating meetings. I'm going because I'm better. You know, like that is the same action, but the attitude towards it actually changes the whole experience and the whole perception of people, and that actually builds trust and respect to the people. But that's another topic for another webinar. Who else want to share any habits, topics, ideas? I believe this is a great example. Like there's a lot of people here with a lot of experience, and we can share some things that we can take home to our work life or to our personal life to build these spaces.
So Julian shared in the chat, this is the thing, we started with myself a lot, asking colleagues how they are and sharing bits of my personal life. Giving trust to others from my experience can lead them to open up for sharing as well. And we see Magdalena agreeing as well. And I have to agree a lot. And actually showing ourselves, we can call it vulnerable, or we can call it human, but showing ourselves human creates strong level of empathy, and empathy is basic to build trust. So I couldn't agree more as well.
Awesome.
And maybe not about just how to build a space of psychological safety or what things have worked for you. Is there anything else you'd like to ask, anything else you'd like to share with us in terms of what we discussed in this webinar? Are these topics we discussed something that you see at your work environments, either if it's some habits that are extremely positive or some habits that actually are pushing us away from psychological safety?
I have something here to share or even ask, because I think we do have quite a safe environment here, but we hire a lot. So there's people coming from other company cultures, and they come with a certain level of mistrust. And it takes us a while, or we're struggling, because our hiring is also very restrictive. So we look that people fit our culture, but still they have experience with their backgrounds. And then they come with the mistrust, and it's really hard for them,
yes,
for us to tell people how to gain trust. You know what I mean? So
yes,
we're struggling with this. And I'm not sure how to solve this or how to catch them sooner than, yeah, as soon as possible.
Also, trust is those two ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my point of view, trust is, there's nothing more mutual or collective than trust.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about finding the right way for people to trust you and for you to trust people, and the right processes. And for instance, in Netflix, all documents are open to everyone because they base a lot of that on trust. In some other companies, not. But it's not because they don't trust you. It's just understood that in this company, this is the way of working, and you should focus on that, and they trust you to do whatever in your area of expertise. So there's different level of trust and different policies. I think here it comes to how can you help someone to have the best cultural fit possible, how you can be transparent about what things are, what things are possible, what things are not possible. So you limit expectations, and because sometimes, and all those unwritten rules as well. In many organizations, what you preach is not what you practice.
Mhm.
And that goes with big corporate values and mission and vision, or it also goes to small things and small projects. Okay, we actually, I don't know, we're gonna work on sprints, for instance, but then you're actually working on sprints that are not being speeded up because you have to go through a whole bureaucracy. So you're still working on the same, but you're giving expectation and you're practicing a different thing. So that creates untrust. Okay, what this guy told me yesterday is not actually true. So I see it like this, but there might be a million of opinions.
Yeah.
Josipa raised her hand. You want to talk?
Yes, well, hello everyone. I just wanted to share my experience in building trust in our company. Well, I work in a company where there's like 90% of people are developers, and they are introverts. There's no talking about emotions. There's no talking about sharing our feelings and stuff like that. So that's all unusual for them, and they don't like it. But I think it's important in building that that trust, that they can say how they feel, because they also feel. Maybe they don't like to talk about it. They don't like to verbalize as much, maybe as extroverts and stuff, but it is important. So during the December, during this holiday Christmas spirit, well, they had, I organized for them to write appreciation notes for everyone on the team. We call them sugar cubes. And they were writing notes of appreciation, complimenting each other, saying thank you to each other on, I don't know, thank you for helping me in this project. Thank you for being there for me. Thank you for taking your time to help me to better understand, I don't know, this programming or whatever there was. And actually, when we started it, they hated me. They were like, oh my God, why do we have to do this? About appreciation, being grateful for each other. What is all that about? And I didn't want it to stop. I was like, you know, I'm very determined. We have to do this. We have to go through this. I was sending them reminders. I was sending them examples on what to say, how to express their feelings, their opinions, their thoughts, or whatever. And in the end, when they had to open their sugar cubes, as we call them, they were so happy, and they said that that was the best thing that we did in a long time, and that they were so surprised seeing how others in the team see them and feel about them, and what kind of things they actually see in each other, which they didn't even think about before. So, for example, that was a big step for us and for them, since they're not as good in talking about emotions and feelings and all that trust and mutual respect. So yeah, there's more than computers for them. And I'm really happy that I actually went through it all to the end, even though in the beginning it looked like a big disaster. But yeah.
That's
So,
really cool.
yeah.
Sorry, I think what we have an interesting question of Daniel, that how can we approach the situation when the intelligent jerk is C-level? So back to the Monica argument, we have also in Focus Nights have like 2 new members that are like weight of our culture and enter to this crazy stuff with bad words. So the important is like the unwritten rules and the culture is more powerful than some people, right? For example, here in Fuck Up, we have like, I hear a rule in operations where he's one of the co-founders also. And if you are unpunctual, the meeting is going to start, even though if you are the co-founder of the CEO, whatever. So we are going to start the meeting, and those unwritten rules are bigger and more important than some like C-levels, right? So everyone is going to complement each other, and that's powerful than people. So that's important. That's why important to create some culture habits, some behaviors that everyone respects, right?
Thank you, Eric. Also, it's valid to say that some cultures accept brilliant jerks, and if that's what is accepted culturally in the company, then it's hard to get him to change. Obviously, you can work around. You can talk to the right people. I guess honesty, transparency, and respect counts more than much more things. But again, in some cultures, like I said in Netflix, it's actually one of their values. We don't tolerate brilliant jerks. You can be the best one in this particular department, but as Eric pointed before, you have to protect collective intelligence. So you're fired. Doesn't matter if you are the best, if you're super productive and you actually help us make millions, you're killing my culture. So it also depends on how you balance culture with actual job level of seniority and behavior.
I just want to add something really quick with Josipa's comment. I'm also an engineer and I also work on these computer environments. And I believe it's kind of covering as well, because we have this stereotype that engineers cannot show feelings. So maybe some engineers would like to share their feelings, but they are on this covering side like, oh no, we don't need to share, we are robots. So that's really cool that you take those masks off. And I know, guys, we're running out of time. We would love to continue the conversation. We want to thank you very much for all the people that participated on the chat, talking, Hannah, Josipa, Monica, Daniel, everybody. Thank you very much for joining this call. We really enjoyed. If you want to keep the conversation, we can still be here, but I want you to go to your life and build these psychological safety spaces. In the end, what really matters here is that we want to remember that we're working with humans, and the more human we can be, the better our work will be, right? And as we love to say in Focus Nights, we leave filters to Instagram and live a life more authentic. So thank you very much, guys. I don't know, Yannick, Eric, you want to add something else?
Like always, I didn't, but no, I just wanted to say thank you so much for everything. It's been beautiful to see familiar spaces, familiar faces, spaces. Everything's about spaces today. So it's good to see you, and it's good to see new faces and talk about what matters, which is work, where we spend lots of hours a day. And if we can help make work environments a bit better or a bit more fun and at the same time more productive, then we're here for that. And let us know if any of you guys would like to have a quick chat with us about any of the topics, share some ideas, or if you'd like to propose one topic for another session. We're super open about different points of view, different ideas, and we like to learn about different cultures and different ways of approaching and tackling challenges. And again, like the guys said, I want to appreciate your participation. You've been super active, guys. And sorry if some of the chats haven't had a response, but we did our best, and it's been great to see you all participating, and talk to you very soon.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye,
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Hannah.
Thank
Bye.
you, everyone. Bye.